Well, hello and welcome back to another photography adventure. And here's a sentence that I didn't think I would ever say, but welcome to Slovenia. Just to give you a little bit of context on what is going on here, I've had a hell of a day. This morning at 2 o'clock in the morning, I left my house in Scotland and drove down to Newcastle Airport, where I then got on a flight to Paris. But eventually I landed here in Slovenia at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and now I've just arrived here at my accommodation. I am here to do a photography workshop with Michele Bavisano, and we are going to be mainly concentrating on finding some of the European brown bears in the incredible forest here. I think there's about 9 other people on the workshop, and I'm sure I'm going to meet them all pretty soon. My first impressions of Slovenia is that it's like stepping back in time, and the place is just absolutely beautiful. So it's going to be a very action-packed few days. I think most of what I'll be doing is going to be just me voicing over any sort of B-roll footage that I can get when we're in the wildlife hides. And yeah, I'm just extremely keen to get out there and photograph bears for the first ever time. That afternoon I met the rest of the group and Michele, and we all had dinner, and then in the morning we spent a little bit of time in a hide within the grounds of the accommodation where we saw this awesome squirrel. And then in the afternoon, despite the gloomy, miserable conditions, we headed into the Slovenian forest for our first session in these wildlife hides. I ended up sharing a hide with another guy from the UK called Ben, and we got ourselves all set up and were sitting there full of excitement. But sadly, after about 5 hours, the most exciting thing we had seen was this jay. Later that night I started to get pretty sick, and I kept waking up with like shivers and sweating and shivers and sweating. I had a proper fever and hardly got any sleep. But somehow, after considering cancelling the session, at 6:45 I met the group and we headed back into the Slovenian forests once more. I was once again sharing a hide with Ben, but as you can see I was spending most of my time either dozing or fully asleep. I really wasn't feeling very well at all, and after 3 hours we still hadn't seen any bears, so we returned to the lodge for some lunch. At about 2 p.m. the weather had dramatically improved and we headed out to a new location, hopeful that the improving weather would bring the bears out to play. I once again set up in the hide with Ben, and after 5 hours there was still no bear action, and I was still feeling pretty sick. As you can imagine, the morale in the group was now getting pretty low, but on this next morning things were about to change. We returned to the same hide as we had been to on the first day, and after sitting and waiting for around about an hour, finally we saw our first European brown bear. Seeing this young male bear through my camera lens for the first time was such an incredible feeling, and in case you're wondering, the differences between a grizzly bear and a brown bear are pretty much just which continent they live on. In North America they tend to be called grizzly bears, but here in Europe they are called brown bears, and they're both just subspecies from the same bear. The shooting conditions weren't great with not too much light coming through the trees, but I was just absolutely thrilled and relieved to know that I would at least leave this trip with 1 or 2 usable images. After a quick lunch break, we were once again heading out into the forests of Slovenia, and on this occasion we were heading to one of the most remote hides they have after a 12-kilometre trek up this white road. After seeing our first bear that morning, everybody was in high spirits, but we were also extremely keen to feel that buzz again. If I just pause the video here for a second, you'll see these red tubes coming out the back of these wildlife hides, and the purpose of these is to take any human scent far up into the canopy to help eliminate the chance of the bears smelling our presence. Ben and I set up in the same hide again, full of enthusiasm, but after 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, that enthusiasm was soon dwindling, and after a total of 6 hours in the hide, we decided to call it a day and head back to our accommodation. And so came our final morning, and as you can see, I was feeling a lot better because I was even putting in some effort to film some B-roll for the vlog. We met outside at 7 o'clock in the morning, and for some reason I had a good feeling in my gut. Michele said we were going to another hide where there had been rumours of a mother with a very small cub. And as soon as he mentioned it, for some reason I thought this morning is our morning. As usual, Ben and I set up in the hide and waited patiently. We both had a good feeling that on this one last chance the whole trip was going to come together. And after about an hour in the hide, we were treated to something truly magical. It's quite hard to describe the emotions I was feeling watching this mother and her tiny 5-week-old cub in front of us after what had been a pretty tough last couple of days and a total of 22 hours in the hides. Witnessing this scene made the whole trip worthwhile, and I came away with some images that I wouldn't have dreamt of capturing before I left home. Whilst filming some video in portrait mode, I also captured one or two absolutely beautiful moments. And that concludes this photography adventure. From here we headed back to the accommodation and I started my journey back to Scotland. I really hope you've enjoyed watching this content because these are some of the hardest images I've ever had to work to get. If you did enjoy the content, please give the video a like and consider commenting because it really does help to push this video out to more people. As always, thank you very much for joining me on this photography adventure, and I shall see you very soon on the next one.